Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Taylor Burrowes. Welcome to The Sweet Spot, where we discuss life and love from a classic lens with a twist of nuance. Tonight I'm going to be bringing on Jack Peach. I'm really excited for you to meet him and for us to hear all about what he does working with men in his dating coaching business. And I'm going to ask him to join right now, so let me get Jack in. I can go into a little bit of housekeeping as well. Pop in. Hi, Jack.
Hey, how you doing, Taylor?
Good. I don't know if you've done this before, but it's good to see you, good to have you, and nice
No,
to.
first time doing anything really on Instagram, so it's good. And thanks for inviting me on. Good to see you again. Been a little while.
Yeah, you too, you too. We have a hard stop, everybody, probably 30, 45 minutes in, so I'm gonna kind of dig right into it. But first I wanted to mention a couple of the housekeeping points. So if you're new to IG Lives on my page, I'm actually new to IG Lives on my page too, but you can opt to buy a badge. So that's a cool new feature to support me and my work. So you can buy a badge from 99 cents to $4.99. And you're also available, or you're also able to buy a subscription for my IG. So you can do a subscription for only 99 cents a month, which is pretty cool too. And you get a lot of added bonuses with that. Free group chats, broadcast channel, reels, posts, stories, and highlights just for my subscribers, as well as just VIP access to me overall. So lots of cool things happening on Instagram, and I'm excited. We haven't had a glitch yet, since today has been like the IG day of a lot of stress for people. Have you heard about that, Jack?
I've just woke up, so it's 8 a.m. in the morning here, so
That's true.
not heard anything about
I
that.
guess it happened when you were sleeping last night, so you didn't hear any of the chaos. I'll inform you. There was like a big glitch where like hundreds of thousands of people got locked out of Instagram, and people with like massive accounts like lost tons of people, and they were freaking out. So we don't know exactly what happened on the back end, but it seems like it's been restored and they're fixing everything now. So that's good. It was good time
That's good, yeah.
on, yeah.
That
But
would have been a bit of a problem.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I didn't really fuss about it too much. Figured it might sort itself out, and it did. But I'm usually just worried about like connection issues for IG Live. So anybody on the live, let me look, check out who's here. We've got a couple of people. So do me a favor and tell me where you are in the world in the comments, so I know you're present and listening and ready to go. I'm curious to hear where everybody is. If you're in the United States, if you're in Canada, if you're in somewhere in South America, Egypt, very cool.
Cool.
That's awesome. If you're in where Jack is, he's in Indonesia. If you're in, gosh, anywhere else, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Australia, very cool. Oh
Oh.
yeah, hi. I don't remember your first name, but I remember your handle, the Masculine Initiative. So we got some people from a good amount of places. So welcome. Jack, you want to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about like what you feel comfortable sharing about your personal life? I know I shared with my viewers that I met you and Pina in Thailand with Dennis, and I haven't met your baby yet, but hopefully I'll get to meet Jake one day. But you're expecting a second one too, so all very exciting developments for you and the family.
Yeah, it's exciting. My wife is pretty heavily pregnant at this point. She's 8 months pregnant, so it's exciting times. She's just doing prenatal yoga as we talk in the other in the other room on a Zoom call.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it's fun. It's good. We moved to Indonesia when me and Taylor met, and me, Taylor, Dennis, and my wife met. We were living in Thailand at the time, but we moved to Indonesia about 8 months ago. So it's good to be here. It's good to be able to communicate with people. Thai is a much harder language than Indonesian, so I can have small talk with people here, and it makes you feel a bit more integrated into the community, which is good.
Yeah, and you know what? We watched this movie the other day. Here's my first tangent of the evening, and it was located in Chiang Rai. It was about the
All right.
cave thing. Have you heard about this movie?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that happened
Well,
less
yeah, it
than half
actually
an
happened.
hour from where I was living. So it was exactly where I was living when that big cave incident, those kids got stuck in the cave, and
Yeah.
they've opened up a big tourist center there, and obviously they had the film, and it was a big deal at the time. Yeah, it was just big rains and came up flash flooded, and they got stuck in there. Yeah.
Right, but that was pretty remarkable. I don't want to ruin it for anybody who wants to see the movie. It is an actual event, so if you do look it up, you will know how it ends. But it's an excellent movie, and it's kind of a nice change of pace, to be able to see something so encouraging about community, right?
Hmm.
About coming together and really sacrificing your individual needs for the greater good, which I think is kind of relevant. I did a little bit of, recon researching you, Jack. I mean, not that I already know you, but I kind of wanted to get a little bit of your snippets that you like to put out there. And on your YouTube channel, I really liked how you said your mission to save the West, kind of like save the West one relationship at a time, basically.
Yeah, it's just like I'm very careful if I don't want to be self-aggrandizing. I don't want to have kind of like a messiah complex or something. But the thing is, in life, we can influence people around us, and we can do things that can improve the world, change things, and make the place, make the world a better place. And one of the ways that I do think I can impact the world through both my audience online, but also through, my one-on-one work, which is it's much more kind of instantly recognizable how you're helping, is through helping people with their relationships, because I do believe that relationships are one of the three main areas which have the most impact on our life, and probably has the largest impact aside from health. Like if you're sick, that has a huge impact on your life quality. But after, aside from being sick, I think your quality of relationships will make the biggest difference on you, the people around you, and then also it kind of filters out as well. That's the thing. When you have a good relationship,
Yeah.
and you have good relationships with the people around you in terms of friendships, other couples, it has an exponential effect, because you can lead by example, and you can kind of create that kind of community, which, the Thai cave drama kind of illuminates as well. And the best way you can do that is by improving your relationships. And a lot of people today, a lot of men today, find it hard to get into relationships, find it hard to find women worthy of relationships. We have a culture which is kind of, I would say, pitted against relationships. I think it makes it harder than it historically was. But that doesn't mean you can't. It's just because a lot of people have some false ideas, false beliefs, and put into their minds, shall we say, or culturally brewed up and made to seem a bigger problem than I think they actually are in reality.
Yeah, I agree with most of everything that you say. We're on the same page there, but I think it's important to sort of have this renaissance, right, in the West, and I like your mission. I'm, an ally in your mission for sure, because I think that's important. Not that I think there's anything wrong with exploring the world and different people and connecting and aligning with people from different cultures that might have shared values. I think that's great too, like you did. And
I did it.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, in a way, I mean, Dennis and I are also like half American, but like we came from different cultures and countries in a way. So we traveled for each other. And I think that's a great way to connect with someone as well. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I want to jump into some of these questions so that we can get to the crux of what you do when you're working with men. And I also want to say hi to a couple more people from my audience. We got Casey from Phoenix and Zen. You're in Austin, Texas, visiting right now, but she lives in Seattle. Yeah, I know. I remembered you live in Seattle, Zen, but I hope that Texas is doing well for you. Okay, so Jack, what are the steps that you teach men? I know you have your free guide. If anyone wants to get your free guide, they can go to your Instagram profile and just click the link in your profile and take you to that free guide. But basically, how would you summarize that guide? Like, what do you teach people when someone hires you to help them build confidence and approach women?
Yeah, so it's kind of a twofold strategy, right? Because generally the guys that come to me, their main goal is to get into a relationship. That's kind of what I help guys do. I'm not really trying to help them, get laid or just be able to go out and just have sex with random women. Unfortunately, you know, the way you use the tools I give you is up to you, and it will help you do that. But generally, the guys that come to me don't want that. They want to get relationships.
Right.
And that kind of informs the strategy we take, right? Because that's the goal. We can't really just go in full pickup artist tactics, because that will actually push away the kind of women that guys want.
Sure.
Right? If you want to have a relationship, you need a better quality woman who generally are more discerning than the kind of women that you're gonna be able to just approach in a club, for example, and, you know, escalate quickly into sleeping with you. But even though the goal is to get into a relationship, a lot of these guys don't have maybe the confidence with women, or they haven't had a lot of success recently, or maybe they've just not had a lot of success with women in general. And the best way to really improve your confidence with women is to kind of jump in the deep end and start approaching, right? So the way that I run approaching is different to most kind of like day game style people. It's very much just in the initial stages, building habits, because what will make you attractive to a woman, or attractive to people in generally, is I start off by getting guys just to improve their social skills generally. Because there's a lot of overlap between having good social skills and getting on with men and being able to get into a relationship and actually do well with women. If you're a likable person who guys like, there's a good chance that women will like you too. So a big part of it is just improving that. And then also, if you can approach women, it's so much easier when you go on a date with a girl off, say, online dating, or if you meet someone, you know, at a kind of more targeted activity where you're trying to find a certain type of woman, starting that conversation there where you know you're going to have something to already talk about, whether it be a dance class or, you know, a yoga class, whatever it might be. Yeah. It gets a lot easier in comparison to talking to a random girl in the street or in a coffee shop or in a bookstore. Sure. So the main reason I actually focus on approaching is not because I actually think it's the best way to meet a woman to get into a relationship. It can happen. It has happened with my clients, but I don't think it is the best way. It's more about building the habits and the confidence that makes everything else easier by comparison. So that's why the free guide I offer kind of gets you out there. And if you read that guide, you'll probably notice it's very different from how most other dating coaches approaching to put it bluntly. It's a much more focused on connection, right, and much more focused on just having a genuine conversation and exploring where that conversation goes, rather than, okay, I have this goal of getting her number and I'm going to do everything I can to get the number and see where, you know, and kind of almost force it. My way is a bit more natural. It's a bit less ROI. You're going to get less connections. You're going to get less numbers probably than approaching it another way. But the girls that you do get their numbers with is going to actually be girls that you want to spend time with.
Yeah, quality over quantity for sure.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like outcome independence, right? I talk about that a lot too. So a lot of the dating coaches out there are very outcome dependent. They're looking for that like quick result at the end, whether it's a number or taking them home or whatever, an escalation. So I'm totally with you, but I don't know if everyone out there in the audience knows those terms, but I think you described it really well. Just having more of that organic, relaxed, and I don't mean boring relaxed, but just comfortable and confident, like conversation with someone, and letting it just reveal itself, like whatever happens, just having a good experience and connection with someone.
Yeah, and a big part of that's having the right mindset. As you say, like, it is very much, you have to be outcome independent. It's follow the process and the rewards will come, particularly for relationships. This is one of the problems with, you know, if you want to highlight success of getting into relationships. If a guy works with me for 3 to 6 months, he can have a lot of good success with women, but there's no guarantee the women he's going to meet are going to be someone he's going to get into a relationship with. Mm-hmm. But the idea is more that you see the process. You see, if before, you know, you've never got a girl's number, you've never, you know, some of these guys have never been with a woman ever, they've never been on a date, or you've not had a date in 2 years. And then, okay, by the time you work with me, you've had 5 or 6 dates with different women, and yeah, not all of them have worked out, but you can see the process is working. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, it's just at that point, you've already got the confidence, you've already got the skills to succeed. It's just about finding someone who's in the right place themselves, because I think an overlooked factor when it comes to getting into relationships is there is an element of, chance, luck, God's will, whatever you want to put it, because even you really get on with someone, they just might not be in a position to get into a relationship. They might just be
Timing.
not in the right mental space, or, just logistically it won't work out for whatever reason. They don't maybe want to put quite enough effort in the early stages to really commit that early. And it is, there is an element of almost chance there.
Yes, and I mean, I think that it's important for you to feel like, I don't know, that internalized confidence, right? Like you're not acting or performing, you're just really at ease.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, I think it's almost like the equivalent of positivity for women, like the way that a woman can radiate that radiance and like that warmth and whatever, that I call it, like she lights up a room. There's an equivalent energy for men, and you have to cultivate it, that fire in your belly, that real presence when you're talking to someone or connecting. If you're very sort of insular or withdrawn or shy or insecure or whatever, anxious, then that's going to translate and make connecting so much more difficult.
Absolutely. And finding those defense, because they're defense mechanisms essentially. When guys are, anxious or withdrawn or, struggling with those kind of genuine expressions of emotion and what they think and feel about life, it comes down to being afraid of getting hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
like one of the things that one of the questions about what's kind of the biggest, I think you asked what was one of the ones later on, but
Yeah.
one of the biggest thing's holding men back is that fear.
Right.
And it's that fear of vulnerability often because we get perhaps conditioned when we're younger, at school maybe, or another bad relationship from our parents. It doesn't really matter how, but a lot of guys have opened up in the past and been hurt. And that causes this defense mechanism, or this kind of emotional response to intimacy or to being in a vulnerable situation with women. And then they have a habitual rationalization of why they feel that way, whether it is, being anxious, whether it is having nothing to say, whatever it is, like, I don't know what to say to her. It's like, we always have something to say. It's just, you're afraid of how she's going to respond to it. Right. So you rationalize it as having nothing to say. So, being able to overcome these patterns, which stop you being vulnerable, because you asked this question on your Twitter recently, what is vulnerability?
Yeah.
Right? This is a conversation I often talk about with my clients. For me, vulnerability is just sharing things that you don't share with everyone. It's sharing a little bit about yourself that normally you keep hidden from strangers. We all have, to some degree, a mask we put on when we go through the world. It should be congruent with who we are, but we have different kind of, you're a different person I'm a different person with my wife, as I am here talking to you, as I am with my son, as I am with my parents, right? Every single person in this situation is Jack. It's just there's a slightly different way that I express myself. And a lot of guys have this mask they put on, but they're not comfortable ever kind of peeling back and letting out a little bbit of who they are, which is this being a vulnerability. And it doesn't mean expressing, doesn't mean going through your breakup, right? And telling her about your ex or your first date, right? It can just be a little bit like telling her what you really think about something. That's an expression of vulnerability, because whenever you tell someone what you really think, there's a chance they won't agree with you, and there's a chance that they could reject you, or they could laugh at you or call you an idiot for telling them what you really do think about things. So
yeah,
it's being able to go on. Yeah.
I think that fear of rejection goes deep. And I mean, this
Yes.
kind of connecting it to a different topic, but it also, I think, tell me what you think as a man, relates to performance anxiety overall, right? Like, I think whether it's in the bedroom or whether it's just dealing and interacting with women, it's that fear of like rejection, but also performance anxiety. Like they're just going to disappoint, they're going to fall flat. And that's scary as hell, right? So I think that you have to confront that, you have to work through that, and then, like you said, it's learning how to be honest and learning how to, if you want to call it vulnerability, you can also say transparency, you know,
Yeah.
openness. Just being able to have that ability to connect with someone, having that secure attachment at your core, so that you know yeah, you're able to be a human being with someone and not just like a talking head.
Yeah. Yeah, precisely. I think that the fear of rejection is one of the, it's one of the greatest barriers to success in all relationships for basically all people. I, it varies in degree from person to person. Like some people have really, there's a really bad case of it where it's a lot of work to overcome. But we all have it to a degree, and I think a big part of it's the schooling system as well. We all go to school and we put in, a classroom of 30 emotionally immature people of the same age, and if you not everyone in there is going to be of the same emotional maturity. And when you're expressing these things as a kid, I know it happened to me at school. People will put you down, people will call you an idiot for expressing yourself, and it creates this natural tendency and this natural pattern to just close up.
Sure.
Obviously, some more extreme examples might be, if your parents were very, very withdrawn or didn't allow you the space to be able to express yourself, then it would be probably deeper. But we all have it to a degree.
Sure.
It's all been conditioned within us to a degree, and it will unfortunately stop, particularly men, but women too, getting into the kind of relationships they want. You have to open yourself up to the potential emotional pain to allow yourself to get the emotional joy that comes with a good, loving, committed relationship. And even on dates, it's not, it's the slow process of this opening up, which is basically what dating is. So it's always necessary.
And just I want to answer a question that we got in the comments from Namal. He asked, "What is a Chad?" So maybe you can define it in your terms, but what it brought to mind to me was your quadrant. And we had like a back and forth about the quadrant, but you can explain it in more depth. But I like how you have the different categories of simp, whipped, F-boy, and Chad. And so it's like sad to Chad is kind of like simp is what I meant by sad. And I think it escalates according to your two axes, which is level of desire and level of comfort. So you wanna explain it in your own words?
Yeah, so everything, like, there's kind of two different levels of attraction that men can really pull out of women, which is there's the level of desire that they can have women feel for them, which is, sexual attraction, basically on a, almost on a primal level. And there's also the comfort aspect, which is basically how much she can trust you and feel like she can open up with you and share with you. And a Chad, a real Chad, is someone who can do both.
Right.
He's someone who has that kind of, and you can kind of almost see these as, I often use this to define my clients as kind of like alpha beta. Like, it's a false dichotomy, alpha beta, but most people know what it is in this space, at least. So an alpha will be more the desire attributes. It'll be things like, are you in shape? Are you disagreeable? Are you confident? Are you able to, confidence probably, you can use that in different terms, but are you able to, kind of have this will for living? It can also be things like, are you, successful, your social status? These are all things that will add to elements of desire. And most dating coaches, most kind of pickup artist style people will only focus on desire. They think that's all you need with women. You just need to be the guy that women want to sleep with, and you're set. Now, that might be true if you want to sleep with women, which, obviously is a part of any relationship. But if you want to have a good relationship, a committed relationship that will last, which is what I want my clients to have and what most of my clients want, which is why they work with me, is you also need to produce this feeling of comfort within her, which is things like, by the way, your financial security is not an element of desire, it's an element of comfort. If you're able to provide for a woman financially, that makes her feel safe, that you can trust her, that she can trust you in the future to look after her and your children. But it's also things like making her feel understood. It's like being able to really connect with her emotionally. it's being able to protect her as well. There's two different levels of kind of physical attraction. There's the more kind of like Brad Pitt ripped style, kind of bodybuilder style, is going to be more like desire heavy, whereas a big guy who's a bit chunkier, not as much defined muscle. He's not fat, right? But he's a bit of a chunkier style. That's actually going to be more of a primal comfort attractor because it indicates that he can protect her from harm. So a real Chad is someone who can incorporate both, right? He's the integrated kind of archetypal masculine kind of like king figure, right? Whereas the other area is a guy who has neither of these, who's got no level of desire. Women don't find him sexually attractive, and he also creeps them out. They don't feel like they can trust him. That's more of the simp kind of, or kind of creep kind of archetype there. And most of my clients are not, they're not creeps or anything like that, but they're people who don't have at least one of these two areas, sometimes both, and we have to be able to bring them out through the habit forming processes, right? Because a lot of success with women, as people say, is confidence and being confident in these things, but confidence always derives from competence. So you have to be able to do it. And men in general also need, they tend to have the internal transformations more through actually getting results in certain areas as well, which is why I do include some element of pickup in my coaching, because, a tool is a tool, right? It's how you use it. You can use a hammer to nail in the wall, to put your pictures up, the pictures of your family on, but you use a hammer to hit someone in the head, right? It's the intention behind how you use the hammer. And some pickup artist tools, as long as your intention is right, is fine. As long as your goal is to get into a relationship and not manipulate women into sleeping with you. And that will help you. That will help you if you're a guy who's not succeeding with women.
I would also define that as like the low-hanging fruit, like when you are using those types of tactics, whether it's PUA or even women, like sometimes they're looking for attention, and so they go for the easy targets, they go for the low-hanging fruit. And so you can have, success in quantity with that strategy, but if you're looking for quality, that's not going to work. So you have to take more of this style of approach that you're teaching men with the habits and internal confidence and competence building. I think that's true. Like you have to live it out. It has to be something that
Absolutely.
you exhibit in your life. Like you said, men really do a lot of their learning and processing through action. And I think that's been a hot topic lately too. I actually spoke about that recently, just saying that it's not always just men and women. You don't have to compartmentalize. Men only do through action or learn through action, but the masculine does. And so when we talk about integration too, that's one of my main topics, is how we both have those elements, and we need to have that anchor of the opposite essence, right, in order to be healthy and stable and secure and ultimately attract the best in the opposite sex as well. So lots that we can focus on. I actually did I tried to do my own little quadrant for an equivalent for women. And I was looking at it today and I'm like, I think I got one of those switched by accident, because I was doing it in the 4 categories for women, talking about the ride or die being like the equivalent to the chat.
Oh yeah.
Right? So the ride or die girl she's got both elements of, you can, right now, what I'm calling the different elements is self-awareness and enthusiasm for you. So she's kind of got the whole package. But the woman that is like low enthusiasm for you, but high self-awareness, is going to end up being like friend zone girl. Like she's like your roommate, kind of best friend, classic blue pill relationship. And then you have the kryptonite, which is the sort of crazy hot girl. And then the last one is like the doormat or the clinger, like she's really enthusiastic about you, but she has no self-awareness. She's not secure. She's very insecure in her attachment styles. And, at first it kind of like feeds your ego, but then you realize, okay, this is not, like an appropriate partner for my life, like for a marriage or whatever. So I was trying to play off of your quadrant, but I think I think I have to do a little bit more work on it. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's good because I think the actual types are absolutely correct. Like you have the kind of hot crazy scale style one in the bottom right, which is um, always going to have an element of attraction to men. I think there is always going to be something there,
Yeah.
especially for guys who maybe actually aren't very good at processing their own emotions. They actually tend to be the guys who most get attracted to kind of the hot, crazy girls. They enjoy the drama. They claim they don't, but your actions tell me you do. If you keep going for these women, you actually quite like it. But it's finding that kind of very well-rounded woman, which is very difficult today. And I want people to think as well, like from my perspective, if you've met a woman, for example, which I think was your top right, the kind of clinger, like the clingy woman, often in those kind of women can actually make good partners if she's willing to do the work and she's open to doing the work, and you can kind of bring her into that final quadrant. Like I do think like this is a problem I find in my clients is sometimes we get too focused on finding like the perfect woman rather than realizing that and same with men, by the way, as well, I mean, there's the classic, you're trying to fix him or whatever. It's not that. It's more finding someone who's willing to go through the work to become better.
Right.
And you're not gonna find the perfect kind of woman always. As long as she's pretty good in general, doesn't have any really serious issues, and there can be one or two things that you can work on in time, and you have to figure out whether she's willing to put the work in. She can skip off. She can move over more along the quadrant to the other axis, right? Same with guys as well. Like when I first met my wife, I wasn't the man I am today. I'm a much better partner now than I was when we first started dating. And that's because a good woman, or a good man if you're a woman, will help you integrate these areas and will push you to be better, or they should. And that's a very good, I'm sure, you're big on vetting. That's a good vetting tool. If they do push you to be better, and you do feel like that, and you can see them doing the same, like I would say that is one of the most important things that you can find in a partner.
Casey says guys only have fun with drama when they can handle it. I don't know what that means.
It's a good rationalization.
But yeah, I think with women, they have to have that element of self-awareness. It's that capacity to grow, that openness to learn and listen and be accountable and be humble. And so you can tell when a woman is just refusing or in denial about that. And after a certain amount of time, it just becomes a lost cause, right? You could buy into it for as long as you want, if you want to, hold your breath and pray that she all of a sudden changes one day. But if it's like a year, especially, like if it's a year and there's no movement, there's no openness and receptivity to that, then I would say it's definitely probably overtime for you to leave. I think you need to really, scaffold this as you go. And if you don't see even those incremental changes or willingness, like it's one thing if she says, oh yeah, like I want to do that, but there's no follow through, there's no real genuine desire or ability to put it into action, then you can tell way earlier if it's not going anywhere. But I find with men, and tell me if this is true in your experience, that men in particular, they truly have this fascination almost, like it's with themselves, not just necessarily with women, but like they want to fix things. They want to take on the responsibility, and they want to do everything they can, turn over every rock to try and fix whatever's wrong to make it work. And I think that can be their Achilles heel often, when they don't give up when they should.
Yeah, I mean, this is the key point of like discernment, right? It's being able to discern the difference between a genuinely broken person who's not willing to put in any effort, and being able to discern whether, she's just someone who's had, a bit of past experiences that need her to be just worked through a little bit. And yeah, you're right. Within a year, you can tell if that, which is the case for sure. I think often earlier. And I think there's kind of two different parts to wanting to fix women. I think there is an intrinsic desire within men which is we want to be that kind of benefactor. There's something about like a pretty healthy masculine role, which wants to be the guy who is the protector and the provider and wants to make people's lives better, the people he loves lives better, and wants to improve them. But there's a very thin line between being that and being completely delusional about what you're actually being able to do, and having that kind of messiah complex or that savior complex. And it's actually quite a transactional way of, when it comes to that point of having that savior complex, it's often a transactional way of viewing relationships, that they actually think that they're providing value to the woman in a way that means that she will never leave them. You know, if I fix her, then I've done so much for her that she will value me, she will love me, she will be, you know, a partner to me. And that's quite an unhealthy way of actually seeing relationships. It has to be a mutually beneficial thing where you're both working through it just because you genuinely want to give to each other, and not because you're trying to create this kind of like little, almost like hook into her. It's actually in some ways very similar to the guy who was actually emotionally abusive. It's just a more healthy expression of the same desire, which is you're trying to tie this woman to you through putting her down or making her feel ugly, like she can't get another man, so she's going to have to stay with you. That's actually what the guy who's trying to fix her is doing, actually. He's trying to offer value in a way that means she won't leave him, because often he's afraid that she'll find someone else, or he doesn't think that he can get better in some cases. His self-image might be a little bit worse. He doesn't believe that he can actually attract a more healthy woman, right? And he's like, maybe this is the level I can get, and if I can fix her, she's going to be better than I can get otherwise, right? So obviously there's a lot of nuance to these things. It's, you know,
no, I agree
can't
with you.
always...
I've talked a bit about, and it came up recently, where, you know, radical responsibility or radical accountability and extreme ownership is like this really popular idea. But I think there's a threshold where it goes too far, because then you're taking the autonomy away from the other person, and that becomes more controlling and abusive, and even, you know, like you're the martyr, and it's a covert contract. Ultimately, it's just a different way that it shows up in a relationship that's dysfunctional and unhealthy. So it's an unequal or unequitable relationship, I guess.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's, no relationship's perfect, but some relationships are definitely worse than others. And it's trying to get it onto the right healthy footing as you can. A big part of that is, you know, your choice of partner, but it's also how you behave within it as well.
Yes. I'm just mindful of the time, so I want to look at some of these other questions. You mentioned that fear, and specifically fear of rejection, is one of the main barriers for men becoming more successful in, you know, developing their competence with women in relationships. But what other barriers have you been seeing?
And one of the main ones, I think, is actually fear of change, actually, as well. Some guys, they want a relationship, but they're actually afraid of the change that because to actually, if you're not succeeding with women, generally you will have to change the way you're behaving to become more successful. And a lot of guys don't want to do that. They want to kind of just do the same thing, be the same person, and but with a wife.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's just not how life works. Often the reason, if you've been a long time single, is because it's like, you know, if there's a pattern, look to yourself. You know, it's the classic phrase. If there's a pattern of things that keep happening in your life to you, it's quite probably something you're doing. And often accepting that as well can be, you know, it hurts our egos. None of us want to admit we're wrong. None of us wants to admit that maybe, you know, we could have lived in a better way for the past 5 years, whatever it might be, or the patterns of behavior that we have are actually pushing people away. And being able to actually overcome that initial barrier, that is the number one thing I actually look for when I'm looking to work with a prospective client. Because one of the things that I've learned, and I will say no to clients, even if they want to work with me, and like if I don't think it's going to be worth it for them, because I haven't seen them yet get to the point where they'll be able to make those changes.
Right.
Because it has to, before you ever work with a coach, you have to first believe that, okay, I need to change something and I'm capable of changing it.
Yes.
Right. And then the coach is what facilitates your personal change. But you've already got to have got to that point. Like, this is also, you know, another issue that I think holds not particularly my clients back, but most men back, is not wanting to ask for help as well.
Yeah.
Not wanting to admit that you've got a problem with women, because women are so close to a man's masculinity. It's a very humbling and painful thing to admit, actually, I need help with this. Like, as a man, I'm struggling with women. It's so close to your innate masculinity that it's very difficult for men to do. And I understand that. Like, I get it. Like, as someone who has definitely suffered from pride and arrogance in the past and has a tendency towards it myself, like, I get that that's a painful thing to go through, because it is in many ways kind of an ego death. It's kind of an experience that, okay, actually, I've been doing this wrong and I need to change. And that's a tough point to get to.
I totally get it. It is very tough to get there. It's impossible if, you know, you see it and they don't. And so knowing that, you don't want to, you know, have that uphill battle before you even get started. So they got to come receptive and ready, kind of having an idea that there's something that needs to change. Even if it's like, I'm not sure what needs to change, but I know something needs to change and I'm willing to.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
Don't expect them to know what to do, right? It's more of the fact that I need to change something, and I'm going to humble myself, and I'm going to willing to trust you, and I'm just going to follow, you know, follow what you say and go through with it and just trust that it will work. And they're the people that get the success, in my experience.
Yeah.
I've learned through experience that, like, if they're not at that point and they're always questioning and they don't really believe it, that they tend not to get the results they want. And they're the people who end up leaving, feeling dissatisfied, you know, especially like what I offer is not cheap. So at this point, I would rather, in the beginning, I just said yes to everyone. But now I'm at the point where I can just, if I don't think you're in that position, because I don't want you to feel like, you know, you didn't get the most out of it. And also it's frustrating for me, you know, on my level, if I'm working with someone and I'm telling them, okay, you need to do this, and then they just don't do it, it's like, there's not really anything else I can do at that point. You know, I can't do this for you. I can only give you the path. You have to walk it.
Yeah.
You know, that's what any teacher will do. The teacher will show you the path. It will take you to the path. It will give you maybe a map, but you've got to walk it on your own, you know, and that's the only way you're going to get the changes, by the way. That's the only way you are going to change who you are on the internal level, which is gonna really, you know, transform your life in probably the way that you hope for.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good point. Matt says, fire point, Jack. The answer is within. He liked that comment. So you're getting a lot of engagement in the chat right here. But I had an example of that just recently, and this is something that comes up a lot. So it's not one particular person that I'm thinking about. If that person happens to be watching or watches this afterwards. You know, I talk a bit about male neuroticism and how that shows up often in ways that people don't realize. And the idea of neuroticism, you know, whether it's anxiety, rumination, restlessness, like lots of different behavioral manifestations that they're not like a pathology necessarily, but it's something that can get in the way of connection with women. And it's almost like static, right? Or feedback, like this noise that is uncomfortable. So it creates this dis-ease when you're interacting with a woman, if you're all stuck in your head. So you're not like grounded, you're not in your body, you're not like connected to yourself, basically. So if you're not connected to yourself properly, then you can't really connect to another human being. And so I work with a lot of these men that are caught in they're very cerebral and they're very intellectual, they're very successful. And I get it, like you're like top dog in every other way. But when it comes to relationships, you're just like transferring that same personality into dating. And kind of like what you said before, you wear a different hat or have a different mask in different capacities, and this is a good thing. So you need to be integrated so that all of those things are authentically a part of you, but you need to know when to take off that mask, or those behaviors are not effective in certain circumstances. And so they have to see that as a problem, though. A lot of men sometimes that I work with will have this resistance to admitting there's a problem with that. It's like, oh, but I like that about me. And I'm like, that's great. I like that about you too, and where it's successful. You know, if it works for you in your business or with your family or whatever, that's great. But is it working for you in your personal life? And that's where, you know, you kind of get a good reading on whether they're willing to look at you, like look at the problem through your eyes and be open to that. And that can be really confronting. So you have to kind of try to tread lightly, but oftentimes it's just like a black and white situation where I feel like, hey, you know, if you don't see it as a problem, then we can't go forward. That's, I mean, because it can't just be me telling you what the problem is and you disagreeing. If it's not a problem for you, then you know, it kind of creates a barrier to working together.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd actually say that's probably the number one problem that most men actually have in a dating setting.
Yeah.
Actually, is that kind of behavior, getting in all these things, anxiety, getting in their head, not knowing what to say, just drifting out the conversation. Like, they are all manifestations of the same general principle, which is actually they're uncomfortable with expressing themselves to a woman or to men as well, and they want to keep an aspect of them hidden, because this is why vulnerability is such an important topic. It's why I always talk about vulnerability, is because whenever you say vulnerability, it's like a dirty word. It conjures up this image of like men crying on a first date to their partner. As I explained earlier, that's not what it is. It's just being able to genuinely express yourself and genuinely be yourself in that moment. Express your emotions and realize when you're giving your emotions, it's not a feminine thing, and people like it. People like it when you talk with emotion. Right now, I'm talking with emotion. I've got a bit of passion in me. It makes it more engaging. It makes you want to listen. It makes you feel like what I'm saying holds weight.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make me look like a woman because I'm talking with emotion right now. But a lot of guys, they want to have it very logical. They want to have it rational. They want to keep it like, oh yeah, it's just what I'm saying and that's all that matters. It's not the undercurrent behind it. And you really need to tap into that undercurrent, because that's actually how you have good conversation. Now, you can talk with a logical friend and like a dude and really have a really good high level conversation about politics, right? That's fine. But women in general, some women are like that, but women in general will be much more engaged with the guy who just maybe talks about the same thing, but talks about it in a more passionate way. You know, you can still talk about politics. She may not care about politics, but if you're passionate about it and she can feel that passion, she's going to be engaged with you. She's going to feel connected to you in that moment, right? And it is the classic phrase. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And you have to be very careful with disconnecting yourself from those emotional states. And that's all it is. All those little neurotic patterns, they're all a way to kind of shield yourself from actually expressing what you really think and feel. That's what they are. They're defense mechanisms that have become habitual over time. You don't even realize you're doing it most of the time. Like, you don't realize what's happening. You don't realize you feel uncomfortable right now. Maybe you're talking about a sensitive topic. Maybe there's there's something that kind of triggers your subconscious. There's a pattern in the past. And then at that point, that's when you disconnect and take it in a logical way, or you drift off, or you jump out the conversation because you don't actually want to take it any further.
Right.
And until you get over that barrier, if you're one of these guys, and as I say, I think this is probably the most common thing that I face in my clients. Yeah. And there's more obviously, but this is one of the most common. Until you can get over that and you can learn to identify the trigger and the feelings, it always starts with the feeling. And being able to identify that feeling, that's the first thing I do with all my clients, is in a safer environment with men and women, but in a non kind of dating environment, not with beautiful women that you're really attracted to, because that's the hardest time to do it. Sure. Is to try and learn to identify that feeling and realize that whenever you're drifting out, oh, what's happening here? Okay, that's what's happening here, and I need to pull myself back in. And it's normal. You're not going to suddenly be able to talk like that all the time if you've struggled with it in the past. It's like anything. It takes practice and takes time to make it an unconscious habit rather than something you're consciously trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really important facet to explore is just how to integrate even the basics of logic and emotion. Like we can talk, we can get stuck there for a really long time. But if one way I think to reframe it, maybe for people who are resistant to the idea of vulnerability or emotions, because I know when it goes too far, so I get that, but
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think it's important to see it as like a language. And so our emotions are usually a language that we know very little about and we're not intentional with. And so the first thing is to become emotionally literate. Know what to label the feelings that you have and the emotions that you have internally so that you can communicate about it to yourself and to other people. So that's kind of intellectualizing it a little bit, but I think it can help create that pathway to understanding that our emotions, like we can't escape them. We have to really understand them and process them and separate them from our behaviors too. I've been talking a lot about that too, is how, you know, women generally just however they feel, they think however they behave is fine because their feelings are valid. But with men, since they're more behavior and action focused, usually when you're talking about emotion, they kind of think of a behavior, right? Like they see the behavior and the behavior is not valid or the behavior is not appropriate. And so that's where the miscommunication happens, is that women want to be validated for their emotions and men want to, you know, not be mistreated or dealing with all these sort of over the top emotions that come out in behaviors that can be very difficult to deal with. So I think there's just so much relearning, re-education that needs to happen around emotional intimacy and competence and all that sort of stuff. But I agree with you. I think starting with just men to men, you know, like in my men's group too, like we do a lot of that work is just learning how to connect man to man. And so
Yeah.
you don't need to be dating. You can be a single man and working on all these fundamentals at you know, with your friends and family, or just meeting new people, just being social and engaged in your community. So I think a lot of people get caught up on, you know, they need to be out there on a dating app and going for lunch or coffee with women, but you don't. You can just shift yourself by improving all of these competencies, like you said in the very beginning.
Yeah. And that final point you just mentioned is a key point. It's these social skills, like they bleed over. You know, it's a big part of having good dating success is having a good dating life. If you have a good dating life, you will, a good social life, you will have more dating success. You'll have more opportunities. You'll have more networks you can access. You'll be more attractive at a level. A sociable, popular guy is more attractive in the initial stages. You're gonna have social proof. All these things that come from whether it be having lots of friendship groups, starting to host events, for example, is a great way to improve your dating life. But even things like you say, like going out and just being the guy who, when you go to the coffee shop, everyone knows you. If you then see a pretty girl in there, she's not actually going to feel like you're going specifically to hit on her. If you've talked to 3 people and the barista knows you, and she'll notice this.
Yeah.
You know, people are always watching other people. We notice these things.
Exactly.
Then if you go sit next to her and just start a conversation with her, you're just the guy who starts conversations with people. And it initially lowers that initial barrier that she'll have. She'll be more open to your initial conversation starter. And as I say, it's more about following the general pattern. It's kind of, I always call it follow the thread. Whenever you start a conversation with someone, whenever you try and you try and do an approach or whatever. I actually don't like using that term with my coaching because like it creates this kind of barrier and builds it up. The approaching, it kind of builds up this barrier that makes it like this big scary thing, right? It's you just start a conversation and then you follow the thread. How far does the thread go? Does it go to getting her number and going on a date, or is it just a 2-minute chat and then enjoy your day, right? Because it depends, and all you've got to do is follow the thread. As long as you're open and you're following the thread, wherever that thread ends, that's all that matters. I want to add one final point on emotions as well. Is that what guys have got to realize is that whether or not you are comfortable with your emotions are how you experience life in the here and now. Everything we feel right now, everything we experience right now is our emotional state. It's what we're really feeling at that moment. And as soon as you get into your head and you start thinking logically, you're either in the future or the past. You're either thinking about what you're going to say, you're thinking about what you're going to do, or you're analyzing what's already happened in a certain situation. And being present is so important in life, in social skills particularly, and it all comes down to being aware of your emotions. If you're not aware of your emotions, you cannot be in the present, because it's the only thing we have in that moment is what we feel. And when you're uncomfortable with your feelings, you're uncomfortable with expressing them, it means you can't really be present with yourself at any point.
Yes, that's a good place. Oh, hold on. Sorry, something happened. There we go. That was a good place to end, Jack. I appreciate that. But how can people reach out to you if they're interested in working with you, if they want to connect with you? What can they do?
Best place, well, here on Instagram. I've just started up this Instagram maybe a month or two ago. So you can follow me here on Instagram. You can DM me. I'm trying to be more active on here. But Twitter is always the best place to find me. If you want to have a chat first, talk about things, figure out whether we would be worth having a good fit, go there. If you want to find out more about my work, download my free guide to approaching women. You'll see there's a different perspective to most dating coaches in there, and whether that vibes with you. But yeah, you can always contact me. My DMs are always open to have a chat. Twitter is my most active place, but I'm expanding onto other platforms now. So they'd be the best places to see me. And, if it's worthwhile and we think it's worth us having a chat, we can always sit down. I offer a free 45-minute talk to figure out whether we would be a good fit to work together. But that's only if you really want to work with me. And I will only offer that if I think it's worth us kind of following through on that. But then we can talk in a bit more detail about your situation, whether we would be a good fit.
Wonderful. Well, everyone that I'm seeing comments from is saying that they really appreciated listening to you today, so I'm sure you'll get some people reach out to you. But it was a pleasure chatting with you, Jack, and seeing you again. And please tell Pina I send my love, and Dennis sends his love. And we'll talk again soon. But thank you, everybody.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for having me on again.
Yes.
Good to see you again.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us tonight on The Sweet Spot. Talk to you soon.